The Trump administration just canceled 20 semi-trucks worth of food going to the Cleveland Food Bank to feed hungry, working, starving Americans and children. I haven't talked about that turd on my channel in a while because I know people see it that love that turd, but this is a turd move. Would you agree? Taking food that's already going to rot away from people that actually need it. Can we all collectively agree this is bullshit? Okay, thanks.
The USDA just canceled over $1 billion in funding for schools and food banks to buy from local farms. Here's what that means. 2 major programs just got shut down. One helped schools and childcare centers buy fresh, local food. The other funded food banks and community feeding programs. Both were meant to make food supply chains stronger and get nutritious meals out to people who need them. Now, no new funding is coming. States can use what's left in their current agreements, but once that's gone, that's it. No more. School nutrition officials are worried because schools depend on this to provide healthier meals. Food banks are losing a key funding source, and small farmers who supplied these programs just lost a major buyer. Even governors are pushing back. Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey called the cuts devastating for families and farmers. At a time when food prices are high and food insecurity is rising, this decision matters. Schools, food banks, and local farmers are all affected. So what happens next? That's the question. What do you think? Let me know in the comments.
It's trending, but the food banks are closed. I have clients calling, begging, please, I'm hungry. I have people calling from flyers I dropped months ago out of desperation. There's no peanut butter, beans, or bread to be had anywhere. The food banks and nonprofits they've relied on for years are dry. And these aren't even the type of people who can steal a pack of hot dogs. If it comes down to this, they have nothing. You're gonna start smelling decay from the apartments next door.
Food banks in North Carolina are getting funding cut. Yes, this administration is cutting millions of dollars of funding for food. Yeah, apparently North Carolina still has a great need. There are many, many people in North Carolina with considerable need for food, and this administration has decided to cut that funding. Yeah, apparently a few $1 million to help people eat, yeah, it's not in the budget. It's not in the budget, so many of you are just gonna have to go hungry, I guess. Because those few $1 million, yeah, that's just too much money for this administration to handle. So food banks in North Carolina may start to close for lack of funding. But I want you to remember, if you live in North Carolina, this is exactly what you voted for. You voted for an administration that just wants to cut and doesn't want to do anything for anyone. That's what you voted for. Like and follow for more.
Food banks are facing shortages because of cuts to the federal government. That's according to a poll by Reuters. They looked at food banks in 7 different states, and they're like, yeah, we have a shortage right now. But it's not just the people who need the food that are being impacted. It's those who produce it, like farmers. Here's an expert to explain.
Is really impacting food banks across the country. For example, out of that $1.660 billion really goes to children. And why that's important is because the program that the USDA cut, specifically called the Local Food for Schools Cooperative Agreement, does connect local food banks and school systems to farmers. So it was really meant to fully secure a system that can connect those food banks to farmers that may not be able to sell their product in any other capacity. And the food banks do rely on fresh food. So we think about food banks and we think about cans and shelf stable, but a lot of food banks don't have the capacity to, say, refrigerate those fresh food. So what they do is they connect with local farmers, and specifically sometimes within a specific radius, and really support that food system in a particular state or even a particular county. And more important is a lot of those programs do impact fresh food for school children as well.
Said that he wants to make America healthy again, and he's going to put RFK Jr. in charge of that. And wherever you stand, blue, red, purple, green, I don't I don't care, left, right, center, middle, I don't know. We all agree, right, that corporations should not be using us as guinea pigs and giving us worse versions of their ingredients and their products than they sell to Europe countries and things like that, right? I think we all can agree that our food should be better and that our corporations selling to us should not be taking advantage of us. So regardless of what side we're on, it makes you want to support the Make America Healthy Again initiative. I want America to be healthy again. I want to have better options for things at the grocery store. I want the regulatory agencies who are in charge of doing that stuff to actually be empowered to do a better job, to look out for us, the consumers. So tell me how cutting $1 billion from the USDA's budget that is specifically to help school lunches buy from their local farmers and food banks buy from their local farmers to have farm fresh food that is locally sourced. Tell me how that is making America healthy again, to try to have less processed foods, less mega corporation purchases for their food banks and school lunches.
2 federal programs that help schools and food banks buy from local farmers are now coming to an end. The USDA has cut funding for the Local Food for Schools program, which had about $660 million in local food purchase assistance programs, bringing a total of $1 billion to stop in federal spending. Now, some officials are already speaking out against that decision.
Department of Agriculture recently notifying food banks all across the country they are suspending emergency food assistance funding while the Trump administration assesses the spending.
So when you hear that, you think, okay, what's the local impact? It's huge.
Right.
Here's what's happening. Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida says because of that move, they are losing about 910,000 meals. This is food for so many families. Second Harvest Food Bank distributes to hundreds of smaller service organizations across multiple counties. We're talking Orange, Seminole, Osceola, and Brevard counties.
Our political reporter Jeff Allen visited a nonprofit in Orlando that relies in part on this federal food assistance, already feeling the impact, those effects of the loss of federal funding.
People are able to get a break from the high grocery prices at United Against Poverty in Orlando, where the nonprofit runs its own grocery store with food at a discounted rate. But Executive Director Anjali Vaya says lately it's been difficult to keep their shelves stocked.
It's a really sad state because the individuals and Central Florida families are needing more help, but yet we're having a shortage of items that are donated.
The Executive Director of United Against Poverty Orlando tells me there are normally not these empty shelves here, and even products like this tuna back here are only here because they've dipped into their reserve funds to buy them.
We are now having to purchase these items because you can't come into the location and not have the ingredients to make a nutritious meal.
Last year, we visited a food drive at Patmos Chapel in Apopka that happens a couple of times a month. The director of that food drive says lately they've been getting less food shipped to them, yet they're seeing more people showing up for that food, so they're having to reduce what they give to each recipient so they can still serve each of the hundreds of people who show up there. At United Against Poverty, Vaya says they're seeing nearly double the amount of customers into their store than this time last year, and that's forcing them to buy even more of what's not getting donated.
We are purchasing the eggs as well. We have to, again, accommodate all of ours to offer that 60 to 70% savings to our client to stretch the dollar.
And the more they have to spend on food, the more their own future of helping others becomes unclear.
All of the economics of what is going on here, it's all going to start, affecting us as the nonprofit world, definitely, because it's a very uncertain time.
In Orange County, Jeff Allen, Spectrum News.
Want to let you know, Second Harvest Food Bank says the lost food is worth about $1.6 million.
That's a lot of money. So if that funding for the food shipments is not restored, they're going to have to somehow make up for that. And they're hoping that corporate partners in the Central Florida area step in to help.